So welcome everyone to the F1 house. My name is Sakki, and today again I'm joined by Adam. So thank you for joining me. We're going to be doing a different type of video today. We're going to be going off the back of the most recent race and talking about topics surrounding that. And obviously you've seen in the title, is Lewis Hamilton a crybaby? We're going to be talking about that a little bit. His reaction during the race, post race. We're going to be going into all of that. We'd love to hear your opinion. If you think that anything that I've said is wrong, let me know in the comments down below. Would love for you to kind of give your opinion. It's a fan channel. We want to hear what you've got to say. And then after that, we'll probably go over a few other topics. So hang about. It's going to be a great discussion. Adam, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me back. Really enjoyed it last time. More projects in the works as ever.
Yep.
So thank you for having me back.
Yep. Great for joining. So first question. Let's just, you know, I know I'll put the title in there to get people interested. It's a bit clickbaity, but who cares? What do you think? Is Lewis Hamilton a crybaby? Actually, let me give people a bit of an overview of what actually happened. So, pre-race, Lewis basically did two illegal practice starts in the wrong position. The stewards and the FIA announced during the race that he would get two 5-second penalties, which he obviously was not happy about. He ended up being in the pits for 10 seconds in total, which obviously ruined his chances of securing that 91st victory, matching Michael Schumacher's record. So his race was effectively over as soon as he got those penalties. And during the race, he was moaning a lot, like he was just moaning and moaning and moaning. And it was very evident that he was not happy. He was just a proper moody guy, can't be denied. And then after the race, in one of the press conferences with I think it was Sky, he basically inferred that the FIA were trying to stop him from winning. It felt like at all costs, according to him. Don't quote me on that. It's just quick paraphrasing, but he wasn't happy to say the least. And we've led with this title. Is he a crybaby? Adam, what do you think?
Um, I think it's a valid question. I think he's. I got a bit bored of hearing his voice on the team radio when as we were watching the Russian Grand Prix. I know it wasn't the most exciting race, but he was he was certainly making his opinions clear, wasn't he?
Yeah,
The thing that you mentioned though, you mentioned that it kind of ruined his race having to sit in his pit box for 10 seconds. I'm
yeah.
just looking at the results now, and he was actually 22 and a half seconds back from Bottas.
Mhm.
So even without the 10-second penalties, that's still 12 and a half seconds back, which would still have him in third.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's the thing with Lewis is he's personally for me. I think in terms of his driving ability, he's just on such another level, and
Mhm.
he's almost got that kind of mental space to kind of be moody and complain, like while he's still driving the car like better than 99.99999% of anyone that's ever driven a car,
Yeah.
and he's still got that, and he can still moan at the same time. So I think that's maybe what you would hear from other drivers, like as they jumped out of the car. But yeah, I think. What do you think?
To answer the question very shortly, yes, he is a crybaby. Of course he is. Of course he is. But hold, just wait before anyone goes on a mad one and starts sending me hate. Um, it was a bit of a, it was a weird one because people, for me, kind of went a bit over the top because I feel like people don't really, they struggle to see the difference between certain drivers, and there was a lot of comparison between the way that Lewis Hamilton reacted and the way that Daniel Ricciardo reacted. And like, I think part of an elite driver characteristic or their traits that they have is that ability to question everything. So yeah, most drivers are crybabies, including Lewis Hamilton. It just for me it varies from driver to driver, to what extent that is. And Lewis Hamilton, it's for me there's no coincidence that he's the obviously the one of the greatest drivers ever, and it doesn't happen by settling or just being quiet when things go wrong. and not questioning your team
Hmm.
when they do go wrong. So I think it's part and parcel of being a really top driver. And as soon as someone stops questioning things when they go wrong and you're just really glum, and you probably had it in your workspace, like I've had it in previous companies where um, people who are right at the top of the company, they demand the best of you consistently. So when things go wrong, they will be complaining, they will be demanding for explanations. So it would be a bit weird if Lewis suddenly stopped demanding that and stopped let letting his feelings be known. It would be really weird. And
Yeah.
like I said, yes, he is a crybaby, but at the same time, I think that's like a fundamental part of being a very, very elite driver. Like I'm talking about the top tier. I'm not talking
Super.
about everyone else other than him and Max Verstappen. Those him and Max are pretty much in a league of their own. Maybe Charles Leclerc, and even with Charles, he's got that ability to moan. Charles does it, Max does it, Lewis
Yeah.
does it, and for
Yeah.
anybody to come out and say that Lewis does it more than them, he may do, but we also need to take into account that we don't control the cameras, we don't get control of what's broadcasted, and to kind of think that that's the only message or that's the only radio communication that's coming out from Lewis is a bit naive because
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
in
good point.
life there are always narratives. There are always narratives, and Formula One will push a certain message over something else purely because they know it gets this kind of discussion going, and that's their it's their right to do that. But people need to be aware of the fact that not everything you see and hear is the complete story.
So are you saying that Sky Sports are trying to paint Lewis out to be a villain?
No, I think Lewis is capable of sometimes of doing that himself. If I'm
Yeah.
honest with you, based because what happened in the car and then the Sky Sports interview after is a completely yeah, it's another kind of bit of drama to discuss later. But
Yeah.
out of all, like, do you mind people moaning in the car? What do you think of it?
I think, okay, can I get philosophical with you?
Go on.
So this, while we were speaking about Lewis and his kind of and levels to it, I was thinking I've got a bit of an idea about happiness, right? So
Oh God,
happiness,
where is this going, Adam?
yeah, it's going deep. So happiness is like your reality, take away your expectations, and whatever's left is happiness. And the thing with Lewis is the expectations are so high every race. The expectation is to win every race.
Yeah,
That's what we're aiming at. And if anything happens that puts that in jeopardy, then he's going to moan about it.
yeah,
So you mentioned Daniel Ricciardo. Like for Danny Rick, fifth in that Renault, it's a good weekend.
yeah,
Whereas, so if you can say, right, okay, yeah, my bad, it was my mistake, that the situation with Esteban Ocon. Yeah, I'm going to crack on and I'm going to make the best of it. That's because like they're already at kind of expectations. Whereas Lewis was all weekend he had a bad weekend by his standards.
yeah,
He had troubles in Q2. He had the tyre issues. So he had to start on softs, so he had to do that short stint, and then he had the penalties. I think it's the expectation and reality thing that I think that set him off. So
yeah.
in his position, I would probably do the same.
Wow, you just
But I am a moaner, and I am like a real moaner.
yeah. I think like thank you for everyone joining in the chat. I'm not sure how many people are joining at the moment, but we've got a few comments in there. I'll try and read them out um, as we go. But the most recent one comes from Michael. He says that Ricardo does not have the record or same skill level as Hamilton. If someone like Leclerc complains, no one bats an eyelid, which I think kind of echoes the point that you just made about Ricardo's position at the time. It was completely on a different, just nowhere near Lewis
Yeah.
in terms of competing for a race win.
Mm.
And someone else in my F1 community actually mentioned Ricardo versus kind of Hamilton's reaction in their video recently. It was Will at the Formula Podcast One. Um, and he kind of compared it and then kind of used it as an excuse for why people hate Lewis Hamilton. And I just thought it was a bit much because the two kind of areas, the two drivers, should I say, you can't really compare them
Yeah,
because
it's not the same.
one is a GOAT contender to cut all the plaudits short. He's a GOAT
Mm.
contender, and the other one is a nine-time Grand Prix winner. I think he's
The
a
other one's
several-time
moving to
Grand Prix
McLaren
winner.
next year.
Yeah, so they're just in different leagues and they were competing for different things, and I think it's a bit much to try and compare their reactions
Mm.
to kind of justify any hate towards Lewis. Me
And
personally, I don't like moaning or moaners. Like I'm such a positive guy. Like I can handle a bit of moaners, bit of people moaning, but what Lewis was doing, yeah, it was really annoying during the
yeah,
race. It was really annoying, and if when Max does it, I get really annoyed. When Charles does it, I can actually see the rattle in that cockpit with him because he can be really childish about it. But do you know what? I accept it because with these top drivers, this is what they demand. Like you said, the levels and expectations that they have
yeah.
are just so insanely high that they don't settle for anything other than the best, and they want to win at all costs. Maybe not all costs, but they'll pretty much do anything to win. So when their
Mm.
team is messing up and not getting things right, like we see so often with Ferrari, like we see occasionally with Red Bull's engine supplier Honda, and now Mercedes not really understanding the rules fully for that race.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that drivers flip out like that, and I think people need to kind of take that into account when kind of assessing the reactions because yeah, nobody likes a moaner, but at the same time, you're asking these drivers to get the most out of the car and try and
Mm.
compete for wins, and that doesn't happen without asking for your team, asking your team for more and more and more
Yeah.
and more.
I think that plays into it as well. What you said about so the thing with Ricardo, he locked up doing team orders. So really, that should have been a very straightforward manoeuvre. Like it should have been very straightforward.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas Lewis was told by his race engineer that yes, you can do the warm ups in the pit exit. He's told yeah,
mm,
you can do that.
yeah,
And then that was on the Saturday, and then to be then told on Sunday while you're in the race, right, you've got to come in and do 2 5-second penalties for that. This is different again because he didn't know anything was wrong at the time because he asked and he said and he was told that was fine.
yeah,
Whereas Ricardo he just made an error. It was a driver error. Like Ocon did make a meal of doing it. He could have just let off the gas earlier. Like
yeah. I think
just
Ricardo got spooked by it. I
yeah,
genuinely think that Ricardo got because he just
yeah,
was like, why is Ocon there late braking
yeah.
at this stage when it would just be easier to do it on a straight? It was really
Yeah.
bizarre. And again, I
Could have
think it
even done it on turn
shows.
three.
Sorry, go on.
He could have even done it on turn three. Like Ocon could have just let him come through the inside.
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird one. We've got some more questions in the chat. So you got one from, or just a comment from All About Steph One. Yeah, you can't compare Ricardo and Hamilton. Really respect how Ricardo dealt with his penalty, but completely understand Lewis's reaction. And I think that sums it up quite nicely. Like just bringing spotlight to Ricardo's reaction. Like that was just, it was really nice to hear. It was really nice to hear
Yeah.
someone just be like, "Yep, I'll crack on with my race. It is what it is." But at the same time, um, being in Lewis's position, like it's completely different, and you wouldn't want to kind of take away that passion and that reaction. That's one of
No.
the things that I really like about F1 and the drivers that are very successful. They have that passion that spills over in the good times and the bad times. That's what
Yeah.
makes Formula One great. And to ask them to censor that and dim it down, it makes absolutely no sense to me. It makes
No.
zero sense to me.
I agree.
Okay, we've got one from Mike Kuth. He says, a bit off topic, but what are your comments about Toto not getting the CEO of F1? Ooh, good question. So again, I think I've talked about this topic previously,
With Steph,
but
yeah.
also there was an article or kind of interview done with Toto and someone from Sky that got released recently on YouTube. It was about 20 minutes long, and Toto basically talks about the way that he got X'd out of that job interview, basically, because he did get approached by F1, from my understanding, but Ferrari pretty much said they would veto it using their power. So, what do you think of that?
I think there's also the rule, isn't there, about how you can't be active within a team within a certain number of years and then take on that role.
Yeah.
So I don't think Wolf would have been eligible for it anyway, unless all the teams had given it the green light.
But I've
But I
got a
think
funny feeling that they brought that in because Toto was interested in it.
really,
Yeah, that's from what I've read. Let me know in the comments down below.
yeah,
Did they bring that rule in because of Toto applying for the top role at F1, or was it already
the
in
Toto
place?
rule,
Pardon?
the Toto rule.
The Toto rule, Adam's calling it. But yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Um, I think, yeah, initially, I know you and Steph spoke about this in your last live stream, and I agree that it is a little bit odd seeing all these ex-Ferrari people up at the top of the sport. But you've got to consider that Ross Brawn he was elsewhere, and he even had his own team. He had Brawn GP, didn't he? And yeah, I think Domenicali's been away long enough. And in that interview that you mentioned with Toto Wolff, he did say many times maybe this is to grease the wheels for the future. But he did say that Domenicali's integrity is in no question. Like he's
Yeah.
he's a very honest person, and he wants the best for the sport. He's not just a Ferrari guy. And it's also the work recently with Alex and Pino. So it's not just Ferrari.
Yeah, I think, like you said, he's super competent, and I know Toto. He's thinking long term. He has the luxury of time on his hands, and he also has power in the paddock, and he can basically bide his time because he knows that there are very few people that are going to be capable of doing that job, and his name is near the top of the list of people, that very short list of people able to do that job. So I think it's just a matter of time for him, just biding his time, and it will come in time, I think. Moving on to the next part of this kind of discussion about Lewis Hamilton being a crybaby. Just to conclude, I think that most drivers are crybabies. I don't think Lewis is any exception to that, and I kind of expect them to demand the most from them. I know it may not be the nicest thing to hear all the time. They're moaning. I don't appreciate the moaning, but I think it's just part of the profile of being a top driver. Maybe that's just my kind of overall view of it in a modern driver sense. But yeah, next part is the way that he reacted to his penalties and his comments during, I think it was the Sky interview, where he basically said that the FIA were trying to stop him at all measures. What do you think of that?
I thought it was a bit of a weird move directly after the race when he jumped out of the car and spoke to Johnny Herbert post race. He said that he was happy to just take the points and move on.
Yeah.
And then later on, he makes this big dig at the FIA, which could actually work against him in the future, because he's obviously got this thing that the FIA can't stop him, and with the engine mode bans and that sort of stuff. But he's going to speak that into existence if he carries on, and he's going to end up with that happening, because the FIA aren't going to go easy on him if he does this and he keeps drawing attention to the things that are going on. They're not going to go easy on him. He's going to continue to have that microscope on him constantly, as are Mercedes as a whole, because obviously the thing obviously with his penalty points on his super license, that was rescinded after Mercedes accepted fault and kind of held their hands up and said, look, yeah, okay, we apologise, that was our fault. But that's not going to last forever. And if these little things carry on mounting up, and I don't know, I can see it becoming quite dramatic if it continues.
Yeah, you know what, when he said that, I was like, oh, Lewis, what are you doing? What are you doing? Just Your first
Yeah.
response was the best kind of response. Just keep it moving, basically. Don't show them that you care to that
Mm.
extent. And I think what you're saying about it potentially coming back to bite him and him talking it into existence, it could potentially come back and bite him on the bum. At the same time, I have a bit of a doubt over the FIA's ability to be kind of fair and treat everyone the same. Bombshell. Um, yeah, there's this real doubt
Based on what?
based on the fact that their consistency in their kind of rulings is just not there. It feels like certain teams and certain drivers are able to get away with whatever they want without receiving at least some sort of investigation, let alone a punishment. Like the main thing that I was thinking about when all this stuff with Lewis was happening, I think the punishment was right. Firstly, he broke the rules. I don't have any issue with that. But in terms of areas that I think, or incidents where I think they haven't really represented themselves in a great way, is, for example, Charles Leclerc at the Spanish Grand Prix. I think it was a
Mm.
Spanish Grand Prix. Um, Let me know if it's not or it's a different Grand Prix, but I'm pretty sure it was a Spanish Grand Prix where he was basically he did about 3 laps without a seatbelt on.
Yeah, it was a Spanish.
Yeah, so he did 3 laps without a seatbelt on. And I think this was the race before Monza, where Antoine Hubert tragically he lost his life. And I just had that incident in the back of my mind. The race before that, I was like, are the FIA not going to at least give him a warning? Are they not
Mm.
going to punish him? Are they not going to show that safety should be important and you shouldn't really be going around the circuit in multiple laps without a
Mm.
seatbelt on? It was just very bizarre. It was like it got brushed under the carpet and no one really addressed the rule break there. Like, and I know drivers they do that, but that's mainly at the end of the race when they're trying to celebrate with their fans, right? That's my understanding. They'll do it. They'll take the seatbelt off. They'll wave to the fans. They'll do whatever they have to do. But this was during the race. I know that Charles thought that he was beached and wouldn't be able to move the car, but he was able to get going again. Hence why it came off. But for them not to apply the rules or at least investigate it and let it be known, it was just really weird. And on top of that, after deciding that Lewis has broken the rules during this Grand Prix, or the most recent one, by doing the 2 illegal practice starts, they also decided to not apply the penalty points, which I think is a bit bizarre.
Mm.
If you're breaking the rules and you're automatically meant to get the penalty points, why would you then go back and rescind those penalty points and not apply them? Like, am I being pedantic here? Like, am I
I think
being over the top? Guys, let me know what you think down in the comment. Do you think the FIA have been equal in the way that they apply punishments? What do you think, Adam?
I think I think the Russia situation again. I think once Mercedes held their hands up to that and came kind of rushing to Hamilton's support, because again he was told that he could do it. He did ask, and he was told that he could. I think the thing with Leclerc though, I think that is more serious. I think there's a common kind of expectation that the first thing is that everyone is safe.
Yeah.
And for me, I understand, like from a driver's perspective, why you would think, right, I've just got to get on with this and try and get sorted. But if you were his race engineer, if you were one of those people in that Ferrari garage or on the wall there, you would say, like, if you don't have belts on, you need to come in now, and we'll either retire the car or put you back in it, because you can't be driving around at 190 mile an hour, 195 mile an hour with no seatbelts on.
Yeah.
It's wild. And then for there to be no penalty points come after that. Like you get points on your driving license if you drive in 30 miles an hour on the road with seatbelt on. So Leclerc's doing, hot laps with no belt on in in a Grand Prix. Seems very strange that nothing else came out of that.
Yeah, it was very weird. Um, I'm just thinking, are there any other examples that you can think of where you've been like, why have they not investigated that? I know a lot
The
of people. Go on.
Ferrari unit,
Pardon?
Ferrari power unit.
Yep, that is one example. But I think overall, yeah, I wasn't very impressed with Lewis's comments. Um, it's gonna trigger a lot of people, and I don't think in the long term it's a great way to kind of keep your head down and just focus on what counts, because the season is far from sewn up at all. I don't know if there was a better way for him to handle it. What do you think?
I think his best move from a professional standpoint would have been to say the same thing as he said to Johnny Herbert and say, "I'm taking the podium, taking the points from third, move on to the next race, and anything that needs handling can be handled behind the scenes." But he's a very vocal person. Obviously, his social justice commentary at the minute is, he's got a massive kind of basis for that, and he's really pushing that, which he's great. But I think some of his detractors kind of say that he's being a bit of a warrior for a lot of things without kind of doing enough himself. So I think this kind of it feeds those arguments, and maybe kind of makes it a little bit more difficult for people to be with him when he's saying things like this about the FIA. And because realistically, like, is the FIA targeting Lewis Hamilton? Probably not.
Do you think they're targeting Mercedes though?
Yes.
Do you know what I found very interesting as well? Which because I watched the highlights of the race as well, and Steve Jones, David Coulthard, and Mark Webber were talking about it right near the end of the show, and then Steve Jones asked both Mark Webber and David Coulthard what they thought of it, and I was very surprised by the fact that they didn't just shut it down at all. I don't know if you saw it, but he asked them, and they were kind of like, they didn't know what to say. It was very, very odd. It was very odd. They were like, because I expected them to be like, no, it's nonsense. The FIA completely impartial. They wouldn't do such a thing. But they were a bit stunned by it. It's like they wanted to say that Lewis might have a point, which I thought was a bit weird. I thought it was super weird. I don't know what you thought of it.
They always know more than we do, don't they? Like they're still very well connected, and I think in the highlights they were both quite vocal about the penalty situation and the other situations that were going on the track, and they were very kind of critical of the stewards in terms of what they were saying about certain things.
It was a penalty fest, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they loved it. I can't remember who it was, whether it was Coulthard or Webber, that said they've got the yellow jackets on and that's it. They want to use the power. So that was quite funny. Yeah, but I think it was a little bit over the top. I think the thing is though, I think the biggest issue at Russia is the track design. I think that turn 2 is horribly designed. I think we need to put a bigger tyre wall in there and kind of put some curbs in there to direct traffic.
Make it a little bit safer.
Yeah.
I was very surprised that they put those, the red polystyrene barriers and right next to a wall.
Yeah.
Like, when obviously Carlos Sainz crashed into the wall, I was like, that's not a good move. It's not a great move. Purely to stop people going over the curbs. I imagine it's because of safety issues after what happened. I think it was in the F2 race. Can't remember who went flying after hitting a curb. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Like, especially Grosjean. I know you wanted to make a point about that.
Yeah, I think. Shall we move on to Checo first, and because that kind of plays into that, doesn't it? Shall we move on to that? Okay.
Let's go.
So yeah, obviously the current situation that we know at the minute with Racing Point is that there's some whisperings going on behind the scenes, isn't there? And Checo is freely speaking to the media, saying that there's secrets being kept from him, and he found out about the fact that he was moving on by hearing Lawrence Stroll speaking on the phone through his hotel wall, which was a weird turn of events.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that, but
Really?
yeah, I think yeah, I don't know if I believe that. I wouldn't be surprised if someone told Checo, because unless Lawrence Stroll has a particularly loud voice and the walls are quite thin in this fancy hotel that the F1 paddock stays at, which I assume isn't the case. I assume the walls are quite nice and thick. Yeah. It just sounds a little bit far fetched to me. And also, why would Checo be next door to Lawrence Stroll?
Yeah.
But it just doesn't add up to me. But yeah, I think Checo's obviously trying to get his name out there a little bit, isn't he? And he's trying to kind of make it known that he's available. And I think Romain Grosjean did him a favour on Sunday by just significantly braking late, like too late to turn two. The thing is, once is fine, twice is like okay, but I thought I was seeing replays, but it was just the next lap, and he was doing it again. And the thing is, I'm no racing driver, obviously, neither of us are, and these people are paid millions of pounds a year for a reason. But if you brake too late once and you lock up and you have to go around and lose time, that's bad. If you then do it again, that's double bad, because you flat spotted the tyres not once but twice. You've lost more time. You're basically running on 50p pieces by the time he's done that. As many times as you have. I imagine the car felt terrible, and you can kind of see why Gunther is constantly swearing, because what do you do? Sat on the pit wall, just watching a guy that you're paying millions of pounds a year just drive straight on every lap. I don't understand it.
It was super odd to see that, and I'm surprised that the FIA didn't give him a penalty for it, because it was like it's like he'd given up and he was just going through. And I think, was it at one point that he completely destroyed the polystyrene?
Yeah, just went through it. Yeah, he caused a virtual safety car by doing that, didn't he?
Yeah,
a very short one, but they had to run out and replace the polystyrene bollards. But I think he's on quite a hot seat at the minute at Haas.
Would you count Magnussen as well? Would you say both of them are in there?
Yeah, I think they've obviously gone with that driver lineup for a long time, and while they initially did okay, they're one step away from back markers now, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I think if they're serious about, because obviously they've signed up to the Concord Agreement, they've committed for the next few years. If they're serious about moving ahead and moving forward, I don't think that's the driver lineup that does it. I think if I was Haas, I would be looking at Checo with his. I think the Central American sponsorship money makes a lot of sense for a North American team.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, makes huge sense.
It just obviously does, doesn't it? We've always said this in the conversations that we've had online and kind of away from YouTube. Just follow the money. The money tends to lead back to where the answers are. So I would probably say Checo and whichever Ferrari driver gets left out of F1 through the GP2 seats, whether be it Eilert or Schwartzman or Schumacher. I don't think Schumacher will be left out though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's a certified shoe-in for one of the seats at least.
Yeah.
But so you're completely discounting Magnussen then? You don't think he will be coming back?
I think he's okay, but I feel like I think it's stale.
Yeah. That's the kind of the vibe that I'm getting from Haas.
Yeah.
And I would have said that about Toro Rosso. No, sorry, AlphaTauri up until a few races ago. As well as Gasly's driving incredibly well, but I get the stale kind of vibe from Daniel Kvyat as well.
Yeah.
I just feel like the Red Bull management are playing a waiting game just to see if there are any other options that come up that are better than Daniel. And his performance has probably improved a little bit since I had these thoughts. But with Haas, definitely there is a very, very strong smell of stale bread stale biscuits around that team, and they need to. I think they need to freshen things up, and with the amount of young drivers coming through, and Sergio Perez becoming available, I think
Yeah.
why not take a little bit of a gamble and switch up the driver lineup, even if it's just one driver, keep one of them there for a little bit of consistency and balance. I think Magnussen would be my choice. I'm not sure that will happen though, because Grosjean, I get the feeling that he's very well connected in the paddock, and he's the head of the drivers association,
Drivers
I believe.
Association, yeah.
So I'm not quite sure. As much as people are willing for it to happen, I'm not quite sure it will do. I'm not quite sure about that one.
I can imagine Grosjean being very successful in sports cars. I think he's someone that would look like a world-class driver again if he was in sports cars, and would rack up Le Mans wins, and I think he would be fantastic in another category. Maybe he's another one that needs a year out of F1 and just needs a bit of a refresh and kind of to shake himself off a little bit and then maybe come back in. But yeah, I think with speaking of Kvyat as well, I think Tsunoda would not be a surprise for that second AlphaTauri seat. I think he's performing well this year. He's got some good GP2 experience. He's had good his
I think your mic's playing up.
Yeah, I think it's died down a little bit now.
It's working fine now. Yeah, I think it's probably a good call there, that second AlphaTauri seat. I think either way, the teams they're gonna have to shake things up. But given what's happened this year with the driver market, I'm actually scared for what's going to happen. I'm not sure my heart can take it, all the movement. But there's rumours as well that how Alfa Romeo have confirmed Kimi Raikkonen as a driver for next year. Like, these are just little posts that I've seen on Instagram, but just before I came on. It wasn't from a news outlet, it was from a fan page. They linked to a source, I believe, over in Italy. But yeah, how would you feel about that? Kimi Raikkonen staying for another year, Giovinazzi probably moving on.
Well, to quote Kimi, for what? Like, why? I know it's just a hobby for him, and I know that he doesn't seem like he's enjoying it that much, though, does he?
Yeah, I don't think so. But I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that's because of the Ferrari engine, given that his car's been quicker than the Ferraris at some point.
Yeah.
So that just shows you.
I think he's obviously still got the quality, hasn't he? He's still a top tier driver for me.
Yeah.
I think if you put him in a Mercedes or a Red Bull, I think he'd still be challenging up near the top.
Yeah, I reckon he could still do a good job, and I've got the feeling that they've gone over the pros and cons. They've looked at his ability, his experience, and thought, which is the better driver combination, Raikkonen and Schumacher, or Giovinazzi and Schumacher? A world champion and the son of Michael Schumacher, the greatest driver of all time. Where's he going to learn better in the current situation than with a former world champion? And it's a shame, because I would love to see both of those seats go to young drivers coming through, as opposed to a Z41, a driver that's in his 40s.
Yeah, he either is or he's soon.
Yeah, a driver that's in his 40s who's had his time. He's had a good shot at it. It's been very successful with many teams, created many memories, got a world championship to his name. It's just it's just a bit weird, given that the lack of opportunity for young drivers coming through. Guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. We've got a lot of interaction going on, so thank you. Got a few likes, got quite a few dislikes as well. That's fine. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree with what I've said? Do you think that Kimi Raikkonen should move on? Do you think he's right to potentially stay on for another year? It's not been confirmed, but let me know what you think down in the comment section below. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Got anything else you wanted to mention?
I think that's mostly it, now, isn't it? I think there's we've had a bit of a lull with things, and I think there's more news to come. We're
Yeah,
obviously in the second half of the calendar now, so
yeah,
I think there'll be more things coming out regarding news and driver changes and stuff
yeah.
soon.
I've realised when there's a bit of a lull, you should expect some mad announcement. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely expecting something.
It's
Thank
the
you for
calm before the
joining.
storm.
Sorry, what?
It's the calm before the storm.
Yep, it is. It definitely is the calm before the storm. God knows what they've got planned for us. But yep, we'll be here talking about it, discussing it. Let me know again what you think down in the comments below. Please, if you're watching this on replay, hit the like button, comment, and let me know what you think. All this engagement really helps get the channel out to more people. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Until next time.